Christian Hosking travelled from the southernmost tip of Argentina to the Arctic Circle on a bicycle.
I ride these waves of like where every kilometre feels like 10, and now I'm just kind of cruising along, just really loving it. And I guess this is why I'm on the trip, for these moments of absolute peace.
The journey took over 18 months. He did some of the journey with a pal, some of the journey with his girlfriend, but a lot of the journey on his own.
I cook much worse dinners when it's only me eating. I've absorbed infinitely more podcasts, and saddest of all, the tent is much colder without Phoebe.
And I'm thrilled to share his story with you. The highs, the lows, the challenges, the lessons learned, the culture shock of returning to his own country, and also the odd coincidence that he listened to the entire back catalogue of this podcast while he was cycling. So to settle the imbalance of him knowing so much about me, it was a wonderful opportunity to sit down and get to know Christian. So without further ado, Christian Hosking. Welcome to the podcast, man. This is a bit of an odd one because I guess we're going to get to know each other in real time. We don't know each other that well, or arguably it could be said that you know me better than I know you after you've listened extensively to the podcast, but we'll get to that. You've recently completed a mammoth 20-month cycle ride from South America to the Arctic Circle. So I'd really like to pick your mind and ask you more about that, like where the idea came from. Like it's wildly ambitious. So maybe you could just tell me about it in your own words.
Yeah, so I guess it had been a dream of mine since maybe I was like 18. I'd always wanted to do a bit. I love cycling. I love cycle touring. I went on my first cycle tour when I was 18 with some pals from school, and we just absolutely loved it. And we got to the end of a month-long trip, and I was like, everyone else wanted to go home, and I was like, I could do this for like ever. It's taken a month, and I just feel really into it, and it feels normal. It feels like my daily life now. So yeah, I'd always thought about doing it, and I did a couple of other month-long cycle tours around Europe and stuff, but it was never quite enough. And it was basically just about waiting until I had enough money to do it. So 10 years later, I managed to actually do it.
That's fascinating. Yeah. So if I can just interrupt real quick. So you did a month-long cycle tour, like a few of them. And every time you were like, this isn't long enough.
This isn't long enough, yeah. Because it takes some time. You start off and you don't know where your stuff is. You're not getting used to the routine of being on the bike all day. Of just general cycle touring stuff and problems and where to sleep, where to camp, what to eat.
Normally, I would imagine after a month, people would be like, "Oh goodness me, that was a month of cycling every day." Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're like, "No, I want to go. I want to, I want to do 19 more of these on the trot."
Yeah. Well, I guess in retrospect, I'd love to do like a 3-month. Yeah. That's the ideal. That's the prime spot. You got into the swing of it. Yeah. But it's not, a year and a half away from your friends and family.
I know some people like you.
Yeah.
My friend Connor, for example, he does stuff like that. And it takes a special kind of person to commit to such a mammoth task, especially a physically demanding task to cycle all day, every day for an extended period of time.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's easier than a lot of people think, actually. And I mean, you're not cycling every day, and maybe three days on and then a day rest. It's kind of normal.
Yeah.
It's more kind of the long-term resilience, I think. Each day to day, if you're relatively fit, you can cycle 60 to 100 kilometers. If that's all you do in a day,
That's all. Oh yeah, just 100 kilometers. That's nothing.
You wake up and you leave at 9 and you finish at 5. It's your 9 to 5, and that's just what you do. You just see some kilometers off.
That's crazy.
But I think doing it for a long amount of time is when it starts to become. That was really the challenge for me, I think, is when you're doing it again and it becomes mundane. It's not exciting. You're not getting out your tent and you're like, this is amazing. You're kind of like, I've got to put up my tent again, and I've got to find somewhere to sleep, and I've got to find something to eat, and so just doing that every day.
Did it become mundane?
I'd say it felt like it could become mundane. I still loved it, but it becomes different and it becomes exhausting.
Yeah.
More than you get over the adrenaline and the excitement at the start of this being an adventure and new, and it suddenly becomes your normal life.
Yeah.
At some point, I don't know when, it becomes just your day-to-day life, and that's just what you do.
I can imagine, yeah. So when the novelty wears off, almost, it just becomes your new normal, and it's like a day job. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're putting in the hours.
You're just putting in the hours, yeah. And it's not to say that it's not fun. That's still obviously what I wanted to do, but it becomes different. It's not that exciting holiday feeling.
Yeah.
It's suddenly your life.
So what I want to know is how you went from doing month-long tours, having a taste of it, to embarking on a rather ambitious 20-month tour from South America to the Arctic Circle. Is it a route that's been done before? Is it a tried and tested? Did you know that it could be done? You know, had the path been laid out before you? Is it a cycle route? You know, tell me more. Like, how did the idea hit you?
Yeah, I think in my 18-year-old brain, when you're just like scrolling on Google Maps, I don't know if you do the same thing, just like going around the world, just be like, what's that place? And then I was looking for a way of cycling a long way without having to take planes or having to take a boat or something. And you kind of look at the Americas and it's kind of together.
Yeah.
So I'm like, wow, you could probably cycle from the bottom to the top of Alaska or Canada or something. I don't really know.
I guess it looks quite small on the map.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, why not? It's just there to there, right?
Yeah, and then you just start Googling, don't you? And I guess in our time, people have done everything pretty much.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, it's like a common thing. Not a common thing. I'd probably say 100 people do it a year, I guess.
Really?
I reckon it's about 100, yeah.
Wow.
Because you bump into the people. So I did it the wrong way round, people say.
Oh, because people normally go from north to south.
People normally go from north to south. Often they're American, and there's like a prevailing wind in the summer in America, so you get that northerly wind that drags you down the coast.
Oh, so you had a headwind rather than a tailwind.
Supposedly, yeah. But it all evens out, I reckon.
Yeah.
But it was so weird because when we were in like Baja, California, we hadn't seen anyone for months, and then suddenly just all these people, we keep like bumping into them in the road.
And they're all going the other way.
They're all going the other way, and you're like, where have you come from and where are you going? Which is classic cycle touring chat.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, Alaska down to Patagonia.
Oh, so you could swap cool stories. So
Yeah,
you'd be like, you want
Yeah.
to look out back there because there's a dodgy bit, and they're like, oh, there's a really good bit there that you can, that would be really cool actually.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
if you're all going the same way, you're all going into the unknown, but you could swap really cool, like valuable insights.
It was super helpful. Yeah, they had great camp spots, places to stay, tips for the next country, border crossings and stuff. So
Amazing.
Yeah. But we only saw them for like a month, and there's maybe 100 people we saw over the course of a month around Baja, California.
Ah.
But it was funny because they were all in kind of groups, and there were some relationships in the groups. It was like a year at school or something.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine, yeah.
It's so funny.
Yeah, you'd have your own little community, and you'd have your own sort of social dynamics.
Yeah, and they were like, some of them were bitching about the others. They like didn't want to cycle together anymore because they'd been in a fight.
Amazing. Yeah, of course you'd get all of that, wouldn't you? But just on the move.
Yeah, but it kind of, we were out of the loop of it, which it made it feel more special, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I guess 100 people, it's not a lot of people. But it probably gets more normalised if you're travelling in this group where everyone's doing the same thing.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So 100 people out of 7 billion, that's a very small percentage of people in the world. But So did you do this alone?
Nice, I did it with my partner Phoebe, which was amazing. And also started with a bud from university as well.
Amazing.
So it was 3 of us at the start, and then Phoebe went back home from San Francisco, and then it was me alone up to Alaska.
That's so interesting. So you actually roped your girlfriend into doing it. That's bonkers.
Yeah.
And another friend. Are they both as mental as you then?
Yeah, well, Phoebe is crazy. She's amazing. Like, she'd already cycled around the world with her mum.
No way.
Which was
You've obviously
amazing.
found the right partner. Like, oh.
Well, yeah, exactly. And we actually, like, I'd obviously been planning it for a long time. And then when I was finally, like, I'm going to do it this year, COVID hit.
Oh,
and then I met her.
Oh.
And then so kind of when we were courting.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
We were talking about like what our dreams were and stuff. And I was like, oh, I really want to do this trip. And she was like, oh yeah, I've already cycled around the world. And I was like, pretty early on, I was like, well, do you want to come along? Like, as soon as COVID chills, let's...
Amazing. Imagine, like, how did you guys meet?
We met in a pub, actually.
No way, randomly.
It was through a friend of a friend. We were just in Cornwall. I was just on a surfing holiday in Cornwall, and she works in Cornwall.
Amazing.
And
so you can be like, oh, I want to cycle, I've just cycled around the world. Be like, oh, wow, cool. Like,
I do.
You'd be like,
exactly.
wow, amazing. Wow, that must just be bumping into your soulmate in a pub. You're like, oh my God, that's amazing.
And then, because it was COVID, our first date, we ended up doing like a cycle tour together. It was kind of like all or nothing in COVID, because it wasn't full COVID, but like it was still where it was like groups of 6 and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So it kind of was an all or nothing, like you either commit, and I ended up like living in her house for like 20, 30 days so early on, which is like so ill-advised, but it kind of, I don't regret it now, right? Because I pulled the trigger.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's lovely, man. That's so nice. And she went home in San Francisco. How come?
Yeah. Well, so she's a doctor, and she'd already taken a year off to cycle around the world. And
and they're like, hey, the NHS is bad enough. Would you stop taking time off?
Yeah, so I think it's complicated in terms of, I think you have to get relicensed if you take more than a year off. So she took a year off in total.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. So they brought it back. Oh, so it was work related.
Yeah.
Nice.
So she had to come back to Cornwall to work. Yeah.
Amazing. And then you carried on all the way up to the Arctic Circle. Is that like basically North Canada?
Yeah, so like the Beaufort Sea, I guess, and the Arctic Ocean.
Yeah.
It's just the north coast of Alaska and north coast of Canada.
Wow.
There's like loads of, I guess it's ice.
Yeah. So you were cycling on ice?
No. So there was snow at the side of roads when I came up, but I just got there. I basically, for the last bit, I left from the last major city just as the snow was melting, and that was how I timed it.
Nice.
Yeah. But have you ever watched Ice Tracker?
I've heard of it.
What is it called? Ice Tracker
Ice
roads?
Truckers, yeah. Yeah.
But that's the road up there.
Wow.
In the winter, it just like becomes pure ice, and they smash it down there.
Wow.
Oh, that's
cool. Really fascinating, man. So that must have taken a lot of planning.
By the end,
you must have needed God knows how many visas and.
Oh right,
like visas, timing, weather. I mean, what are the biggest challenges that you faced on your journey?
Yeah, I guess it's such a big task that you can't plan it all, right? So we kind of just flew into Argentina, and then we kind of just took it from there. To be honest, we took it a week at a time, longer if we needed to. We just kind of, but you can't think that far ahead.
So you just winged it.
You wing it, yeah. And it's not to say it was. Yeah, not to say that we did it badly and we were just like, oh, cool, man.
But you must have needed visas. You just. I
guess before you look, you looked and there's actually no visas that you can't get on the border.
Oh, really?
In terms of tourist visas, yeah. In Argentina, we were there for more than 3 months, but they're super chilled on immigration. So.
Nice. What about America? Because America's quite strict.
Yeah, we had a night coming into America from Baja. But they're such arses, man.
Well, that's famously that border is pretty difficult to cross if you're coming that way.
Especially from Mexico, they're just so uptight and they are so rude. Oh, even like the security guards are rude to you. You're just like, oh hey man, where do I get my passport stamped? And they're just they're like, we don't stamp passports in America. And wow. What? Really? Okay, cool. Well, like, where do I need to go? Just like being so unhelpful. But we went through.
Normally, they're really nice to English people, though. Like typically, Americans love the English.
Well, yeah. On the other side of this, I had such a nice experience on the Alaska border.
Yeah.
The guy was so nice. He asked my Instagram and stuff, and he was super stoked. But the one into America from Mexico was a nightmare.
Well, yeah, it's typically not hard. It's a lot harder to get from Mexico into the southern. Build the wall.
Yeah. But what we did is by accident. We went through all the palaver. with the border security being like absolute arses. It took us so long. And then as we kind of got out the gates and we're like, oh, we made it into America. Yeah, got the stamp and everything.
So they did stamp the passport.
Yeah. Exactly. The guy who's just like a security guard, like big judgy about Mexican immigration. But then, I don't know, we missed a signpost or something and we just like cycled out. We were following the cars. Yeah. We cycled out, carried on cycling. And then we started seeing them, like all the signs were in Spanish.
You didn't cycle, you cycled
like,
back into Mexico?
No. Oh no. And then we kind of like, we realised too late and we tried to reverse. And then there was we'd gone maybe 10 metres across the border. And then we went backwards and there was a security guard and he's like, sorry, you're in Mexico now. You can't come back in. You need to go through immigration.
No, really?
Yeah.
So you crossed the border and went straight back into Mexico accidentally?
Yeah. We just turned left.
Oh my God.
Should have turned right.
But you were on the bikes?
We were on the bikes, yeah.
And they wouldn't let you just cycle back?
Well, this shows how easy it is to get into Mexico
Yeah,
and how hard it is to get into America.
Wow.
Yeah, and then they had to, on the way into Mexico, they started like x-raying our stuff and we're like, oh,
like,
God,
man, I just come from Mexico.
Yeah.
I was literally just here a second ago.
And then we had to do this like horrible walk of shame through the American immigration and the guys were like, what did you guys do? Like, why are you here again?
Yeah. Well, it's too easy the first time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that sounds crazy. Yeah, America is a crazy country.
It's crazy, yeah.
Yeah. So, do you have any like highlights, like special moments that you remember?
What was really nice is when I've been backpacking before, I'd always desired to get off the beaten track and like find something really, I don't know, like real.
Yeah, like discover something new.
Yeah. But we just reveled in just the good tourist activities.
Nice.
Like the best tourist activity in a city. Because we'd been in the bush for a week, just camping, not showering, eating beans and rice. And then you just get into this like tourist mecca.
Nice.
And then you'd have like a great feed, couple of beers. And that was like such a nice thing. But then, so I mean, all the big hitters on the backpacking routes are just amazing.
Tell me more. Like give me an example.
Like the volcano in Guatemala, Acatenango.
Nice.
Which just, things that just blow your mind. You didn't know they existed.
Yeah, until just 30 seconds ago, I didn't know that existed either.
It's literally a flaming volcano that you could just, because it's Guatemala, you just walk up, camp next to it.
No way.
And we just had our minds blown. You just got your camp and you just have the doors open and there's just this volcano going wild outside.
When you say flaming, it's
like fully like kicking up. And
no way.
You hear it, it's like, it's getting, but it's...
What? That's
phenomenal.
Wild. Yeah.
I'm like, how is this allowed?
Yeah. And it's just constantly bubbling away like that.
It's just constantly bubbling away, yeah. I think it's safe. I guess it's safe. Yeah.
Wow. That's phenomenal, man.
Yeah.
So, and tell me some more, like.
I loved Alaska. Alaska's just such a beautiful place. I'd love to go back, I think. It's just so wild and remote. The wildlife is crazy.
I can imagine.
And the wild camp spots. I'd like to go 4 days cycling and you just don't see a settlement and you're just out there by yourself.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
I was wondering, because it was so hard to get into America from Mexico, I was wondering how hard it is to get into Alaska from Canada, because it's technically America. I'm sure it's a different story, or was it?
Yeah, so I mean, you have to jump through the same hoops, which aren't actually that bad. Like you just have your ESTA and you've got a 3-month visa. So it's on paper it's not difficult. It's just the border security that can make it difficult. And
were they more relaxed in Alaska?
So that's it. Yeah, like the guy on the border, he was Mexican.
Amazing.
He was like this cool guy called Ramos, and he was just like, oh, cool man, where are you going? Where have you been? I was like, oh, I've been in South America. He's like, no way, my family's from Mexico.
Oh, amazing.
And he was just super nice, and then asked for my Instagram afterwards.
That's
and just
cool.
wanted to just make sure that I made it to Alaska, made it to the Arctic Circle.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So when you were traveling through South America, did you speak any Spanish?
At the start, I did like GCSE Spanish. So at the start, I was like, oh, yeah, definitely got this. And it's such an uphill battle.
Oh,
yeah. But that's the way you learn, right? Is you just thrown in the deep end. I've got to ask for some avocados and an onion from this lady who doesn't speak any English. I guess I'm going to have to make it work somehow.
Of course.
Yeah.
And how's your Spanish now?
I'd say it's pretty decent now, yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm super happy with it. It was really enjoyable. It's such a nice part of the trip is to feel like you're learning at the same time.
Yeah. That's phenomenal, man. So you had this dream to do this wild trip, and you managed to rope in some friends, wildly enough, and you met a crazy enough girl to join you on the trip. How did it feel when you accomplished it? You must have had a huge sense of achievement looking back and being like, wow, I started in Argentina and now I'm in the Arctic Circle.
I mean, I thought that it would be really climactic. I thought that I'd have this big revelation. I thought I'd cry and just feel this elation. But yeah, I mean, it was just another day of cycling, I guess.
Really?
It was a pretty hard section for me. I think the night before I was pretty upset because I just hit this horrible headwind and I thought I was going to make it to, there was a nice hotel and it was this famous hotel that had an all-you-can-eat buffet and hot showers, and I was just so excited, having been in the bush for 8 days.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And then I just hit this headwind, and I just stopped me dead, and I just had to camp on the side of the road in this shit spot in the wind, and it was just a nightmare. And I don't know. And then I woke up super early. But yeah, when I got there, it was a pretty weird experience, but I don't think I really felt like anything had changed, I guess nothing had really changed. I just didn't have to cycle. Yeah, I guess the ending was underwhelming, yeah.
Oh, I'm here.
Yeah.
I guess I'll go home now.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of when Forrest Gump stops running. He's like, I think I'm going to go home now.
Yeah, it was kind of that, yeah. Yeah, it's true.
Well, that's fascinating, man. So, how did you keep yourself entertained on the journey?
Yeah, so it's a good segue, I reckon. I definitely was just spamming the podcast, especially when Phoebe left in San Francisco.
Yeah.
I just had 1 million podcasts in my ears all day.
Yeah.
And I'd probably have maybe a little 3 hours in the morning just for my own mind.
Yeah, oh, nice, yeah.
Yeah. Just have a little think, and then I'm like, that's enough of that, and then
yeah. So the reason I asked was, I guess a little egocentric, but you told me that you listened to my podcast, this podcast, quite a lot since the episode with Pete, who's your friend, who was on the podcast yesterday, and I think, tell me more, how you found the podcast and how you decided to listen to so many episodes of it and keep listening.
Yeah, it's such a weird one actually, because so Pete's my best mate from uni, and I was actually on the winter when you had your accident and he was there.
Oh really?
So I was in his house when Lou called
really?
him and stuff, and so I was kind of there, but
interesting.
But obviously you don't know who I am. But I always knew about you. I knew about your recovery, and then Pete was on your podcast describing his side of the accident, and after that I just ended up I found it really engaging, and then ended up just listening to all of it, and it's one of my favourite podcasts.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Yeah,
but it's funny. It's created a unequal relationship here, because I feel like I know so much about you, but you obviously know nothing about me. I feel like I've stolen it from you
a little bit. Yeah, I mean it's fascinating getting to know you.
I haven't earned it.
But there is a certain imbalance where you've listened to, there's 60 episodes of the podcast now, so I'm not sure how many of you, but if you've listened to 30 of them, you know an extraordinary amount about me, where I've shared so many intimate details. Like when I was with Lou. I mean, I've gone through different relationships. Benji's had different relationships. We've both. I think we've had the podcast for 3 years now, so we've shared our journeys along the podcast quite a lot. And for you to listen, especially if you knew about the accident and you knew me and you knew Pete, you're like, oh wow, and you've had this crazy insight into my life while cycling across and having time to think about it and digest. And I'm very flattered that you took such an interest, but also fascinated that you found it so interesting.
Yeah. I mean, how does that make you feel, like to be seen by someone and actually like see someone who's seen all of your life?
It's interesting, man, because when I put out like YouTube videos or podcasts, you just see numbers. You just see numbers on a screen, and you're like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I guess your brain sometimes be like, oh, this one's more popular than that one, but you don't really think that every number is a person. Every number is one of you. Yeah. Like, and I'm thinking for some reason, oh, there must be people I know, like friends, but I don't have that many friends. So there must be a certain amount of complete strangers. Well, I guess we're friends now.
For sure.
I had you over for dinner the other day, or we're recording a podcast, But before that, I guess you were like a stranger to me. But I guess it does feel weird knowing that people know so much about me intimately. I guess because I've shared so much. It is an odd feeling. It's a weird imbalance to know that you know a lot of intimate details about my life, and I don't really know that much about you. But,
yeah. But I guess is it it's liberating in a way, like you don't have anything to hide. It's just like pure honesty.
I don't have anything to hide, but it's not something I think about. It's not when I record the podcast, I know that certain things that I say will help people. Certain things I say are quite cathartic and therapeutic to release and just be like, oh, okay, good. Like, when I don't know, if you have like secrets or like, not secrets, but I don't know, when you just sort of put yourself out there and people relate, it's really wonderful. It's a really beautiful thing. But I guess I don't think about it too much, really. I think sometimes it's a bit cringeworthy. I'm like, oh, crap, I look at old videos, I'm like, bloody hell, what did I say that for? But I guess it's part of my journey. I'm very honest. And
it's part of the journey. It's part of the process.
Yeah.
And that's probably why, I mean, there's a reason I've listened to it. I didn't owe you anything.
Yeah.
Like, I've listened to it because I wanted to and I found it engaging, and that probably has come from the honesty, right? And and I feel like other people who've shared the same thing with you, like, because I guess in a way on your season, you were kind of a big name. You've been there for 7 years or so. So like probably more people knew you than you knew of them.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean,
and there's probably lots of people like that who are kind of like friends on Facebook or follow you who've ended up picking up on it. Yeah,
exactly. I've had some quite flattering messages from people who I don't know that well.
Yeah.
Who have messaged me and said, oh, I've listened to every episode. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Like recently. So they've gone back. It's not like they've started from the start and listened to every episode. They've like, oh, I like that. And they've gone back and retrospectively gone through all the episodes. And I'm like, that's fascinating. Like, why would you do that? And they're like, oh, I think your story's fascinating. Like, and I think, it's quite nice actually to think that I do have a story worth sharing. And I guess it is quite a colourful life. And maybe I've got some lessons to share that people find valuable. It's really nice actually thinking about it. It's not something I like put out and be like, oh, this is going to be inspiring for people. It's just something I do and don't think about it too much. But yeah, it's very, very nice. Quite stroking my ego. I can feel my head getting bigger. But yeah,
it's a good thing, right? I'm sure there are people. I don't know if you've saved lives, but I'm sure in the future you will save lives by doing it, or even if you just make people's day better by sharing your tips and life lessons, right? And through your own experience, it's like because of what you've gone through, you can demonstrate. It's not just some guy in a suit telling you, if you do this, you will be happy. It's like you've been through it, and this is what you've done to get through it. And it's maybe not a direct route or whatever, but people can learn from that, and it can change their lives, right?
Yeah, I guess so. That's really nice. That's really kind of you to say, man. Yeah, I've had some actually beautiful comments on my YouTube videos because, like, people. The difference with YouTube videos is that people can comment. Yeah, it's very frictionless for them to just type out. Whereas I've had some beautiful messages from the podcast, but the in order for you to message me, you have to know me first, and then go to the effort of, it's just, you're not watching something and then just typing it. And I've had some beautiful comments on my YouTube videos, like people saying, "Oh, this video saved my life," and I'm like, "Holy shit, that's
really?
That's massive." When I read my suicidal diary entries, which were quite dark, but I read them from a place where I was like, "Hey, this wasn't that long ago. This was like 4 months ago, and I feel like really happy now." So if you're feeling like I felt, just know that it's temporary. You could get through it. And people were like, "Yeah, fucking hell, that is how I feel. Like, hopefully I'll feel better." And that's super lovely. I mean, again, it's raw. It's difficult sometimes for like close family members like my mum to listen to those deep, dark thoughts that I was having. But it's nice to. I put a positive spin on it. So yeah, it's nice. But I feel like all this talking is just like egocentric ego stroking, so I want to sort of segue away. That's really kind of you, man. I really love that you've listened to so many episodes and you're a fan of the podcast. And how does it feel now being part of the podcast, like completing the circle?
Yeah, I mean, it's nice actually. Yeah. I'm glad. It's quite a nice intimate experience to like bring us closer together and make the relationship maybe more equal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because it is funny. Because I mean. Even you telling a story at dinner about like a podcast or something, I'm like, oh fuck, I know that already. So you're like, whoa, this is weird, isn't it? Like, and I didn't come clean straight away. I was I was kind of sat there being like, oh, I kind of know this already. This is.
Oh yeah, so you're talking about when we had dinner the other day. I was talking about a story on a podcast episode, and you were playing dumb that you hadn't listened to.
Yeah, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, suddenly bring out this weird side where I'm like playing dumb. Exactly.
Yeah, it was actually weird because I remember Pete saying to me, "Oh, he's a huge fan. He's listened to every episode." And then I said it. I was like, "Well, obviously not every episode."
Yeah.
He would have known this already.
When I got in the car, I was like, I heard that episode before it got deleted.
Oh, amazing! I'm really glad that's really lovely.
Yeah, no, but it is weird. Like, it's weird to have. It's a relationship I've never had before, right?
Yeah. That's really
I've
lovely.
I've never met someone who's been in my ears while I've been cycling for months and months. Yeah.
I guess so. I feel that way about like I've got some podcasts which I listen to quite a lot. Like there's one called Modern Wisdom. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
No, I didn't listen to it. No.
The host is called Chris Williamson, and I've listened to him loads, and I absolutely love it. And I find it odd because sometimes he'll tell a story, and I'm like, oh, I've heard this story loads because I've listened. I realise that he tells that because not everyone listening to that episode has listened to the back catalogue, and so I feel like sometimes I'll tell a story, and I'm like, oh, well, I know I've told this story before, but it's. I don't know. I guess I don't know. It's really. I feel like if I met that guy, I'd be like, "Holy shit, man!" Like I feel like I know you already, and he'd be like, "Who are you?" And that's really weird to feel like. That's so honestly weird to feel like
you're that person.
I guess. I don't even like to say it, but yeah, I guess we have that a similar relationship.
But it is funny as well because it's not like you're a celebrity who's getting photos in the street. So like if I saw one of my favorite comedians in a bar, like I might ask them for a photo, but realistically I don't care.
Yeah.
Like they get it all the time. I kind of just don't want to bother them.
Yeah.
And they probably get enough compliments. Like I don't think they need it.
Yeah.
But I guess for you it's completely different because
that's cool, man. If you really want to, we'll get a selfie later.
Yeah. Yeah, I bought some tits.
That's awesome, man. That's so awesome. Oh, I don't know how to like get back on track.
Rather than just talking about.
I know. I feel like this could be get quite circular. So I want to circle back into. Well, I wanted it to be more about you. I mean, obviously, it was lovely that we mentioned that. I guess it's part of the story. But you doing this big trip. Do you have like? What do you think? Like the biggest lessons learned on the trip? Like you probably had a lot of time to think and introspect. What are you?
It's great soul searching, isn't it? It made me really grateful for the UK in general, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Tell me more.
I was just our little house in Cornwall with my girlfriend. Like it's just cozy and nice. And I guess I've spent a lot of my privileged life being like, I could do anything. I could, I don't know, move to Costa Rica and be a surf instructor and just live the best life. Or like, I could move to Morzine and like live there for a winter. And then there's like so many things you could go and do. And I guess and then you go and see Costa Rica and you're like, oh, you know what? Like, this isn't quite home. This isn't quite grotty Perranporth, you know?
Yeah.
And when you're in like a super beautiful place that you'd always dreamed of being in, and then you're like, but it's super nice, I'm having a great time, but I don't want to live here. Yeah. I love home.
I guess like being on the road, you know, just you and your thoughts, or me and your my thoughts. But I guess you get a lot of time to like introspect and just, you know, I guess you get to meet yourself. You know, like if you're just on your own on the road, just you and the pedals, you know, and you're camping a lot, you know, that must come with a lot of lessons. You know, like,
you've got to be your best friend, right?
Yeah, right.
And you've got to not be a dick to yourself.
Exactly.
Like if you're stuck with yourself, especially on that last bit, like there's no people, it's just wildlife and camping by yourself. You've got to be kind to yourself.
Of course. Like
any negative thoughts that come in your head, you have to be like, what are you doing? Like, stop being a downer.
I guess you've got to be quite mindful of just, you know, like your own negative thought. Did you ever have any of those moments?
Yeah, for sure. It's obviously extreme. You're tired. It's difficult. It's cold. It's wet. You just like want to be somewhere else quite a lot of the time.
Really?
And you can. Well, you kind of. You look at the weather forecast, and you're like, oh, fuck's sake, it's just raining for the next week. Like if I was at home, I just wouldn't go cycling. Why would I? What am I doing? Like and I'm stuck out here. It's raining, it's cold. I've got to put up my tent, and I'm going to put my wet tent away, and then I'm going to have to get my wet tent out again in the rain.
Oh god!
As all my stuff is just getting wetter and wetter, and I'm cold and miserable, and like this isn't fun, but that's all part of the journey, right? And you have to go through that to then enjoy it when it's sunny.
Yeah. So surely your mind must be playing tricks on you, being like, this isn't worth it. You know, I'm going to go home, I'm going to quit. Did you ever have thoughts like that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think the middle section is much easier in a way. It's just sunny and warm and good surf.
Yeah, of course. So I was thinking, it sprung to mind earlier. So when you're going from the southernmost tip of Argentina, you would have, I guess, depending on the time of the year, like very long days.
Yeah.
And then when you get to the equator, it would be sort of like equal, but very hot. And then when you get up north, I guess if you timed it right, you'd also have very long days.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
So that must have been weird. You're going from, I guess, from summer to summer?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I loved that part of it. I thought it was such a cool part of the trip, was just it slowly becoming like that. So started off and it was nearly 24 hours of daylight.
Wow.
Long days. And then you go up further north, and then suddenly everyone's 6 till 6 every day. Yeah. And they don't have seasons. Yeah. They might have a wet season, but it's just 6 till 6 every day. And you're like, oh wow, that's such a weird.
That's wild.
Such a wild thing, yeah. The sun, you follow the sun as well. The sun goes like straight over you, and then it's like pitch black as soon as it descends. And then you get into Canada, Alaska, and then the northern bit of Alaska where I went, it was 24 hours of sunlight. Like the sun never sets.
Yeah.
So I was cycling along, and the sun's just going round you.
Wow.
Which is so weird. It's always this like beautiful sun low in the sky. Yeah. It's like a permanent sunset or sunrise.
Wow.
It's just like going round you all day.
Fascinating.
You look at your watch, it's 11 p.m, you're still cycling and the sun's out.
Wow.
What the fuck's going on?
That's crazy. Does it like mess with your circadian rhythm?
Yeah.
Yeah?
And all the people I met in Alaska and Canada that time of year, they just say they all just lose their minds.
I can imagine. Like,
they'll like get back from work and they'll like do the mowing. I'll mow the lawn, like get some chores done, and they're like mowing the lawn, like check their watch. It's like, fuck, fuck, it's 11:30 at night. Just the sun's in the sky and they're just like mowing their lawn, probably waving to their neighbour who's also doing the same thing, as if it's like 4 p.m.
That's wild. But then I guess in the winter time they have 24 hours of darkness, surely. They have the opposite.
Yeah, so where I guess the sun maybe only rises a slither.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it must be dark. Like,
wild place to live.
20 hours a day, yeah. Super cold as well.
Yeah.
Like, I think at the moment it's minus 40 Celsius.
That's crazy. Makes you grateful for the like section of Earth that we currently habituate.
Well, yeah. There's like features about the planet that make you really grateful for the UK.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Like, nothing really wants to eat you.
Yeah.
You don't really want to live on the equator because it's hot. And 6 till 6, I really like that changes throughout the year. It's really nice.
I guess you're right.
And then, yeah, so in the UK you're kind of perfect, or in France as well. It's so nice. Like in the summer you have those beautiful long evenings. Yeah. Especially around here, it's so nice. The kind of like sun until 8:30, 9 p.m.
Yeah.
You're outside and it's warm. And then in the winter you kind of like cozy up at 5 p.m, don't you?
I've never really thought about it like that. Since my accident, I have sort of not looked forward to winter as I used to. Yeah. Before I'd be like, oh, winter, the snow's going to fall. I'm going to be, now the snow is more like my prison than my playground, so I don't look forward to it as much. However, I realise now you've said that, I'm like, well, would I rather live in the equator, like 6 till 6? It's quite strict, it's quite regimented, and then you don't have anything to look forward to. Like, I look forward to summer, After the equinox, I'm like, oh, amazing, the days are getting longer slightly, and you kind of get in, oh, it's winter, the clocks change, and then you're like, oh, it's summer, long days, and I think that's so wonderful. I had until you said that, I hadn't fully appreciated how amazing that is, and nothing wants to eat me. Like, we don't get mosquitoes. Like,
no malaria.
Yeah, we don't. May have some annoying flies in the summer, but
we can drink the tap water.
Oh,
how amazing is that?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
Sometimes we don't even. I mean, we pay probably a bit.
Yeah.
Some like lovely people just prepare your water and make sure that it's safe for you to drink.
That's flushing toilets.
Yeah. So
I had an experience a couple of summers ago where we had the water turned off. And I was ill at the time, had diarrhea and sickness, and it was terrible because I had no idea how much water went in the cistern to flush the toilet. I thought I got like a couple of like bottled water. How privileged, just putting bottled water in my thing. And I was like, what?
Volvic.
That's like nothing. And I was like, oh my god. So it probably takes about, I'd say, between 15 and 20 bottles of water, like big litre, to flush the toilet. And I was like, oh my goodness, like. That makes me think, I'll be a bit more mindful next time I flush the toilet. And having, not having it come out the tap, I was like, wowzers. But that's like quite a lot of people's everyday experience, not having drinkable water on tap.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. And just, we had a water filter, but it's a ball ache to just be like hanging this gravity filter up just to get like a bottle of water after 5 minutes.
Yeah, so where would you get water when you're on the road?
Just any water source that look clean.
And then you filter it?
And you filter it, yeah.
So did you ever get anywhere there where you were like, shit, where am I going to get water from,
Yeah, like Baja, California, there were quite a lot of sections. They also, if you go to hotels and stuff, they quite often put salty water in the taps.
What?
Just because it's free if you're by the sea. So like Baja, you're by the sea, but it's a desert, so lots of the water in the taps is all salty.
So you can wash with it, but you can't drink it.
Yeah.
Can you filter that out?
No, so you can't filter salt.
No way. Savage.
So yeah, those long desert sections. There were some in Patagonia as well, where we'd maybe have to carry 3-4 days of water and just lugging it.
Wow.
And then you're it's hot, but you're also mindful that every like gulp of water you sip is like one less gulp of water that you have in your.
Yeah,
I guess then you're cooking with it, and then you kind of end up drinking the leftover water from your rice and stuff.
Why wouldn't you? It might be a bit starchy, but you're either.
But you suddenly become really resourceful.
And you indeed.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you'll be like, oh well, at least I don't have to carry this water. you know,
That's true.
Yeah, but then I don't want to be out of water.
Yeah.
Fascinating. That must give you, again, such a insight into just how, oh, look, water from the tap. Like, amazing. You know, I went for a week, you know, just carrying all my own water, you know, thinking like, again, being mindful of how much you're drinking, how much you're carrying, and wow, there must be so many wonderful lessons from that.
Yeah, I wish it stuck with me more though. When you're in that situation, you're like, God, I'm never ever going to take it for granted ever again. And then next country has potable water, and you're like, glug, 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 glug. You're not even thinking about it.
Yeah, I think I can even relate to that, because now I just flush the toilet, like, that wee smells funny, like, there goes 20 litres of potable water down the toilet. But yeah, I mean, I guess it is hard to keep hold of those lessons. I do try, like, especially like the lessons that I've learnt from my accident, they're quite poignant, and it's nice when I share them. I guess it's probably similar to you, like when you're sharing them, like, oh yeah, it was really nice when I was saving water, or like, oh, it was really nice when I was mindful about, you know, having control of my upper body and not losing that. But then it's hard to sort of stay mindful all the time, every day. Like, what becomes your new normal is very often just taken for granted, like within not that long.
Literally days, hours.
Hours.
Yeah.
Have an extra long shower in the next hotel. Yeah, why not?
And I guess it's not even about you taking less long showers. It's more about just being grateful that you have it and being like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And it's the same as when you get ill, right? You get a cold, and then you're like, oh, I'm never going to take this for granted ever again. God, this is horrible.
Yeah.
And then you become well again, and you're like, I've forgotten about that already.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's part of life, isn't it? Just, you can't. I guess, like, I think that's what actually having a gratitude practice is taught me a lot. To hold on to that is to just be grateful for the mundane all the time. So, like, forcing myself to write down things that I'm grateful for every day is, again, it's teaching me to, or reminding me daily to be like, hey, don't take this for granted, man. Like, I don't know. I'm grateful for mundane stuff. I guess mundane. It's not really when you think about it. I'm grateful for my health a lot of the time, because I'm very healthy, apart from, you know, the obvious. But I've taken care of myself a lot since the accident, and I don't take that for granted, because there are some, you know, things that have happened last year with friends of friends where they've been struck down with things, and you're like, shit, that could happen at any time. And you're like, well, I'm really glad that hasn't happened to me yet. You know, you never know. Like, life can be so unpredictable. And I was saying this in a podcast with Benji recently, like, life's unpredictability can be a double-edged sword. Like, one day you're heartbroken, and the next day you find love, and you're like, oh my God, how amazing. One day you're healthy, and the next day you're not, and you're like, oh shit, you know, like, life can be, you're just like, is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? Life's a roller coaster, man, and you just got to ride it, you know? Exactly. So, I mean, that must have been your experience on the road as well.
Yeah, and you're just every day, I guess you're battling with just stuff that's happening to you. You're like, oh no, don't have enough water. Oh no, there's a horrible storm coming in. Just, there's all sorts going on. Yeah. I think, to be honest though, ironically, the hardest bit was coming home.
Really?
Yeah, so mentally coming home was so hard.
Tell me more.
You come back after you've been away for 18 months, and your friends have been living their lives for 18 months. You're a different person, really.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You've like added 18 months of experience that isn't shared with anyone in your friendship group. You come back and you don't have a job. You suddenly have to do normal things. I also found that before, when I was cycling, you cycle into a town and there's always someone who's just like, hey man, what are you up to? And you kind of always feel like a celebrity. And
amazing.
People always talk to you wherever you are in the world. People are amazing. People love cycle tourists.
Amazing.
But then you come back home and like, you just like walk into Sainsbury's and like no one's speaking to you or like cares about you. Or you're just like walking down the street and you're kind of expecting people to come up and talk to you, and no one does. And it's obvious, but I found it really hard because it was just such a big change.
So I went away for just over maybe 2.5 years. Lived in Australia, New Zealand, and I came back. And one of the things I noticed, I guess in Australia and New Zealand, like especially like living in a small town, you're like, oh hey, g'day, and people would just say it like here as well, bonjour.
Yeah.
People look at you and they say hello as you walk past in the street, and I would like look at people, and if you make extended eye contact with people, they think you're a real weirdo in the UK. They're like, what are you looking at me for? Look at the floor, you know. And you go into the shop and you'd say stuff to the cashier and like, how are you doing? Like here, like bonjour, ça va? And they're like, yeah. Whereas in the UK, it's a more, well, I found it more transactional. Like, the conversation should be short, brief, not longer than necessary, and you're just like, oh god, can you relate to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, two polar opposites, America and the UK, right? So even if I wasn't on a cycle, I think in America they just talk to you whatever anyway. Yeah. And it's just a completely different culture. So getting culture shocked by your own culture that you'd missed for 18 months. So you for 18 months, I was thinking, I just really want to be back in the UK. Like, I really miss it. I can't wait to be back. It's going to be amazing. And then you get back and you feel like a foreigner and a stranger.
Wow. I can relate to that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like being in a time machine, because you go away and you have like years of experience doing different things, wildly different things. I mean, maybe your experience was more wild than my own. And then you go back and people are doing exactly the same thing. And it is like a time machine. It's like, oh shit, you're doing this. And I don't mean any disrespect, but you're doing the same job. You're doing the same thing. And I've had all this wild experience. I've come back and it's just like, oh yeah, like, you know what I mean?
And all that it amounts to is like a couple of questions in the pub, in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I found that as well. You'd expect people to be more inquisitive and like, oh really? Yeah, cool. And then they're like, talk about the football or the weather, and you're like, oh, okay, well,
yeah. And that's fine. Like, you're not gonna live 18 months out with them and just tell them exactly, but it feels like you should.
Yeah. Oh, I can relate to that. Being culture shocked by your own culture. Yeah. Oh man, that's relatable, and I think a lot of people listening might find that quite fascinating as well. Yeah. That's awesome. Man, thanks so much for sharing your story. This has been really, really fascinating. I really, really enjoyed it. So, yeah. And, like, if people want to, like, find you online, do you have an Instagram or anything you want to share?
I guess I kind of gave up Instagram, to be honest.
Fair enough, yeah.
Yeah. I had Instagram during the trip. I've got loads of cool photos from it. It's on Kooks on bikes.
Kooks on bikes?
Yeah, like a surfer kook.
So,
Kook.
Kook
on bikes.
.com?
It's just on Instagram.
Oh, okay, cool,
Instagram,
yeah. So if anyone wants to like follow your...
I've actually got a YouTube channel as well.
No
so I
way.
Maybe every 2 weeks I made a little summary video of what I'd
love
been up
to see that.
Yeah, man, check them out.
Shout out on the podcast. What's it called?
Yeah, that's Kooks on Bikes as well.
Oh, Kooks on
Bikes on YouTube and Instagram. Yeah.
Kooks on Bikes on YouTube and Instagram. Nice one, man.
Yeah.
Well, Christian, this has been a fascinating story. Thanks so much for sharing it, man. And I hope that the listeners can check that out, because I certainly will.
Yeah,
that's
cool.
Fascinating.
Thanks, Fredo.
Thanks so much, man.
Nice.
Hello, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I find Christian fascinating, and I've watched many of his videos on YouTube since this, and I can thoroughly recommend them as high quality, wholesome, feel-good content. His cycle journey is analogous to life, and the themes that run through the series are of a man discovering himself as well as the world around him. I'm going to leave a few clips that will run as the outro, and I hope you enjoy them. So check out Kooks on Bikes, there'll be a link in the description. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend, maybe they'll enjoy it too. Until next time, love yourselves and each other, and I'll see you in the next one.
It's 8 in the evening, I'm still riding. I'm on like 170k at the moment. There's just been absolutely nothing for such a long time, but I'm feeling super positive, which is kind of funny. I stopped, I had a nice little pasta by the side of the road, cooked with some river water, and I'm just completely alone. I haven't seen a car in like an hour, and I'm feeling really positive. And it's so funny, I kind of go from I ride these waves of like where every kilometer feels like 10, and now I'm just kind of cruising along, just really loving it. And I guess this is why I'm on the trip, for these moments of absolute peace and I guess development. I'm putting my mind through some serious cycles, but it's awesome. Never done anything like it. I've done a decent amount of cycle touring in my life, but I was overcome with the realisation as I set off that this was actually the first time I'd ever cycle toured alone. It is definitely a different experience compared to always having someone by your side to chat to or discuss plans with. I find that I worry less about decisions I make, as if I make a bad decision it will only be me that will suffer. I cook much worse dinners when it's only me eating. I've absorbed infinitely more podcasts, and saddest of all, the tent is much colder without Phoebe. My first experience with a bear, I had my headphones in, I was singing along to Dave, and I just really wasn't concentrating. I nearly hit the thing. Absolutely bricked myself. I think that's not the first time that's going to happen, to be honest. I think I'm going to have to keep my eyes a bit more peeled now. Woo! Adrenaline pumping. Yesterday was absolutely brutal, but for my hard work I've been rewarded, and I am flying along, absolutely sweating and sunburnt, but I've got this big old tailwind. It's the dream.